Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
Now, here's your host, Ed Cohen.
This is Ed in San Diego, and you're on a special edition of Global TV Talk Show coming to you from so many places here. From Beirut, Irma, hello, say hi.
Hi, Ed. How are you?
Good.
Hello, everyone.
Yes, so Irma, I have a guest in the background. Her name is Luna Darus, and she's originally from Beirut, and she's working today in Zurich, where she's studying for her master's degree. Luna, why don't you say hi to Irma?
Hello, Irma. How are you?
Hi, Luna. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
It's
So
so
Luna
nice to
is
meet
an
you here
intern in one of my clients, Angie Weinberger, who's from Zurich. Angie, say hi. There she is on the red couch.
Hi, everyone.
So Luna is very, very efficient, very helpful. Angie, why don't you quickly just introduce yourself to the world here?
Yes, thanks, Ed. So I'm a global mobility project manager and also started my own company, Global People Transitions, about 10 years ago, focusing on expats, expat partners, and helping companies with global mobility programs.
And you have a really good hands-on approach to helping people, not just relocatees, but locals as well, do more with their lives. Isn't that too simple? I said it too simply, right?
I would say I probably focus more on the professional part than the life part. But often, when the professional part is working, for example, when the expat partner has found a job, then I think we also, the whole life part gets a lot better. But I know this is not our focus today, so we can move to the next person. Thanks.
Yes, okay. And Andrew Elliman, welcome, and thank you very much for all your work and for introducing me to Zishan. We've already had some words. Welcome, Andy.
Hi, everyone. Good to see everyone again.
So Andy is European head for AGS, and that's the same company that Zishan works for in Ukraine, Moldova. So Zishan, where else besides Moldova and Ukraine?
Ukraine, Moldova, and Belarus, yeah.
Yeah. So other than the war, which is of course amazing in its scope and its,
I think I can't hear you properly.
Impact on so many people. How's business for you? Sorry.
Well,
okay.
it
All right, I will say again, how is business other than from the war?
Well, what we have been thinking here is this war has divided our lives into two parts. It was before the war and after war. Everything was woken up to this reality on the 24th of February this year, to extremely loud bombings and shellings and those missile attacks and all. So initially it was panic. It was panic for everyone. Before that, it was panic for the expats as well, the US embassies, other embassies. They asked basically people to leave Ukraine. Lots of people had to leave their belongings back here. Lots of people, some tried to stay, but most of these expats, they left Ukraine. For approximately, at least I'll say 3 or 4 weeks, everything was at a standstill. We were literally running from the bomb shelters to our apartments to check emails, to reply to queries. Or what we try to do is basically we managed to bring in a huge amount of humanitarian aid into Ukraine, because every company here in Ukraine, they're trying to put in as much effort as they can put to help the locals here, to help the needy, because the corridors were closed, cities were bombed, there were millions and millions of displaced people from all over the world. Meantime, if I may, I would really, on behalf of the Ukrainians, on behalf of people from Ukraine, we would really like to thank Poland, of course, in particular, the West, the European Union, every country literally who has done so much to help the Ukrainians here. It's been so overwhelming. Everything that we are getting in here is just because the partners, the countries have been helping Ukraine a lot. So now returning back to how business is, it was quite slow. No one knew basically what's going to happen for the couple of 3 or 4 weeks there. But we then gradually started. We had customers coming in who asked us to put their belongings to underground storages. That's what we did. We managed to find bunkers here, 3.5, 4 meters down underground, all of them, and we put their items, household belongings. We packed them and we delivered them to those bunkers here so they are safe. Because the German embassy, for example, a colleague of ours, she was afraid if we put the goods overground, they might be hit as well. If it's going to be in an apartment or overground storage, it's going to, I mean, it won't make a big difference there. So that's what we did. Then we started handling, we've even done Elon Musk's 2 shipments of those satellite internet things. We bought them here in Ukraine. We did a lot of humanitarian aid has been done as well. Now what we're doing is it's gradually changing. Ukraine is employing, we are employing hauliers of other nationality. Basically it's Ukrainians, it's the it's the Polish, it's the Bulgarians, it's German hauliers as well who come into Ukraine to deliver these items. So it's their help basically we take right now to have the exports. Again, when I talk about exports, I'm talking about your or other people's cherished personal belongings that we have to pack and we have to return these items back to their respective countries.
Oh,
So
thank you.
right now,
I really appreciate you sharing that information and your time, and I pray for you and for the people. I want to introduce Elena Moscow, who's living now in the Seattle area. Elena and I have known each other a number of years. She has been a speaker at several of our meetings in Silicon Valley and San Francisco area. And thank you so much. I know you have a hard close, and I want to ask you very briefly if you could take 30 seconds, just quick intro so that everybody knows who you are.
Hello, everybody. Elena Moscow. I'm founder and CEO of Globiana. We are in about 10th year at this point. We're a US-German company, but delivering globally, but originally from Silicon Valley. And now we are in San Francisco, Seattle, and Stuttgart. Very excited to be here. Ed is an old friend and partner. We provide intercultural and expat support services. If you heard about Globiana, you probably heard about our cloud platform. So one of our big differentiators is solution that allows companies to scale the services to full program at a very reasonable cost to provide intercultural support for the first year. What I'm really hoping to have time for today is also to highlight the program that Globiana launched yesterday. It's called World for Ukraine. And that's 4 as number 4 in the middle. And it will be a platform pro bono environment that we will be delivering with some of our partners supporting refugees worldwide. Hopefully there'll be a chance to talk about it more. Thank you for having me, Ed.
Thank you. And now we have a special guest, Philip Berry, who is with us in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And he and I have known each other a very long time. When we first met in Paris, he was a global VP with Colgate-Palmolive, managing 60 countries. And he was a speaker at our meeting in Paris and many others since. He's been a winner of the Communicator of the Year Award, and I'm really honored to have him help me today organize some things here. So he's going to give some keynote remarks and welcomes interchange with all of you. But we're going to break it up into 3 sections. One now, and then one in about 30 minutes from now, and then one more before we close. 1 second, I have to do some work here. I'm sorry. I'm playing too many cards here. Okay, Philip Berry is president now of Philip Berry Associates, which is a very executive level, very special level of helping executives be better people. I'm going to say it too quickly. So Philip, I want you to talk to us about these 3 things today, and I'm going to be quiet for about 5 minutes or so. So I'm reading this, 3 fundamental elements of global change management and what's required today, the competencies that are required today because of all this craziness and this turmoil and this heartbreaking stuff that's going on in Ukraine. And all of a sudden we're at war. Like, who thought of this? It's crazy. So all this is impacting, never mind the pandemic, but all of this is impacting how companies are managing people, but they should be leading people, not managing people, right? They should be managing things and making the atmosphere in companies more like a coaching environment, I would guess, so that people can be better than they believe, right? And so Philip Berry is going to be talking about 3 fundamental elements of global change management. And in a few minutes from now, integrating your personal brand into your new improved leadership style. And then transitioning at the end, 3 Qs, IQ, EQ, and CQ. How to expand your leadership. Philip Berry, thanks for being with us for this short keynote.
No, thank you very much, and it's really good to be here. Well, my career has been spent globally, and but I started out domestically at Procter & Gamble doing organizational development, turning what we called older manufacturing systems, into newer socio-technical systems, which were a lot more progressive from a standpoint of dealing with people and policy and markets. And then I moved a few other jobs since then, but also I worked for 20 years where I was a VP of Human Resources for Colgate-Palmolive. And I was the first Vice President of Human Resources for the International Business Development Group, which was opening up full-fledged subsidiaries throughout Eastern Europe and Russia, throughout the Middle East, like Turkey and Saudi, and also throughout all of Africa, North, South, East, and West. And then I had another position where I was a VP of HR for Western Europe, and then another time I had all of Latin America and the Caribbean and Central America. And what's important about this conversation, and also as I begin to integrate where we are now with the type of things that I did in opening up full-fledged subsidiary operations when the Berlin Wall came down, is that it's all about change. And it's all about adjusting your markets and your people to be more impactful. And so when I think about change management, like right now, we're going through a change, and many organizations are going through this change and they feel that it's forced upon them. And so they're trying to adjust. What organizations should be doing is to think about, one, a strategic assessment of where they are now from a standpoint of their markets and from a standpoint of their people. And I'll get into the markets and people later, but that has to do with capability. And it has to do with why you exist in the first place. And then the second component that organizations need to have is to identify a clear future state, not 10 years from now, but 3 years from now, because there is so much change that is taking place. And therefore you have to have a rolling type of a strategic plan that enables you to be nimble. It enables you to be impactful, and it enables you to adjust very well to your organization, to the challenges that are in front of it. And in order to get from your present state to the future state, you have to have what I call a blue ocean transition plan. And that blue ocean transition plan means that you want to look at a number of items and initiatives that you never looked at before. And that has to do specifically with where are the three questions that come to your mind. And that is, how is my business being impactful in the markets that it's in? And where are my markets? And when you think about where my markets are, that's when you begin to address the whole issue of global, because organizations that just think that they can effectively operate within the sphere of their local geographic area without connecting to other areas, those organizations will be left behind. They will be left behind to individual organizations that are able to think more systemically and more globally. And that's where I'll talk more about the skills and capabilities around that later. But there's another piece to that when we think about human capability, and that has to do with technological prowess. That is that, my first job actually was, I was a techie at IBM years ago. And I saw a number of changes that were always taking place in the technology market, where you saw, we started out with this, matter of fact, what I can do now on my iPhone, with this iPhone right here, which maybe you can see, maybe you can't. But anyway, there was a whole room that was able to provide the capability for me to do that before. And now I could do it not only on my iPhone, I could do it on my watch. So I have an Apple Watch that is a lot more functional. So how nimble are we in adjusting to those things? And these things have just come about in the last few years. So just think about 3 years from now, where we're going to be. And so so I just want to set the framework in terms of those three pieces, Ed. And that is one, a strategic assessment of where you are now, an assessment of where you want to be in the not too distant future, which is 3 years from now. In fact, every organization that I have worked with in developing strategic plans, they find that, well, I'll develop something, and then after 2 years, the plans are obsolete. And so organizations have to build their capability from a human standpoint and from a technological standpoint to be impactful. And that's why you need to have what I call a blue ocean plan. Red oceans specifically are always looking at incremental change and making small adjustments to where they are. A blue ocean plan opens up the whole atmosphere to innovation and doing things new from a standpoint of where you're located, how you are working, who you are working with, how you are reaching your customer, your consumer, the type of products that you're making now as opposed to the future. That's what a blue ocean strategic or transition plan needs to have in place. So I'll just put that out there, and then we can talk more about those.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by Porchlight Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
And by airs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at airs.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
Stop dreaming and start living overseas. International lifestyle consultant Emily Braun can help you seamlessly transition to your new life in your dream destination. Whether you are a retiree, a digital nomad, or a mobile executive, Emily Braun can make your transition overseas a success. Visit emilybraun.com.
Cootalisp is a global group with a worldwide footprint. With 16 agencies in 10 countries, Qtalis offers companies and mobile professionals a unique combination of HR services and options. Find us at qtalis.com.
Take your communication skills to the next level. Barbara Bolt of Bolt Global has a passion to make you shine. As our globe expands, effective intercultural communication and presentation is a must. Visit boltglobal.com.
Well, Philip, there's people here I want you to meet, and everybody, please use the chat thing down here on the bottom and get your email and your website or your LinkedIn out to everybody. Everybody share who they are, because the ROI for you guys is the networking, because unfortunately we can't retain all this good stuff we're going to hear. But, you know, we're going to do this on audio, because it's being simultaneously recorded for podcasting on our radio station. But that's going to be about a month from now after it's edited. But in the meanwhile, you can meet up now with email exchange. So Philip, before we let you go for this next 20 minutes or so, give us a cute quickie here. What is the difference between CQ, EQ, and IQ?
Well, the interesting piece is that many individuals are hired in organizations based upon the degree that they get from the school. In fact, for 10 years, I was the vice chair of the board of trustees for the City University system, which included 25 different
in New York,
universities in the New York area. And so you're always trying to get people to be smart and to learn and get a degree. And that's focusing on IQ. And people hire individuals based on IQ. In my executive coaching with people, we have found that IQ is not enough. What needs to happen is that people need to be able to have the relationship skills with individuals and also with the people that are reporting to them and with the organization. And that's where you move from the intellectual quotient, which is IQ, to EQ, which is the emotional quotient. And when you begin to expand on a global basis, then you're looking at CQ, which is the cultural quotient. That is understanding more how to work with different individuals who are working in different, who are living and working in different countries. And that's why when I was doing work and when I had the International Business Development Group, I had HR people in each of those countries reporting into me. So, you know, Romania, Poland, Czech Republic, I lived 70% of the time, you know, in Eastern Europe, 70% of the time throughout Africa and the Middle East, learning basically how to develop relationships where we could develop business, where we could do mergers, where we could do acquisitions. If I didn't have that type of intelligence on the EQ and the CQ level, I wouldn't have been impactful.
Thank you so much. Now we want to get to these executives that I'm really honored to have on the program today. Dave Edick, Mark Nadich, Dave Levine, Mark Colo, Gary Sanger, Barbara Bolt, Rama Balian, but Andy Element in the London area. Welcome again. So just so you know, Andy has climbed Mount Everest, what, twice?
Twice. I attempted it twice, yes.
Yeah, great. And then just recently, you attempted to, you prepared rigorously, and then you attempted to swim the English Channel and got
that's right. Yeah, I swum.
You got a long way, and then thought better of going forward. So Andy Elliman, because of all that, I have awarded you or recognized you with the Communicator of the Year award, and you are such an inspiration to me, and that's why. Anyway, welcome again, and thank you for bringing Zishan.
No, thank you for having us on the show. I mean. Okay, I've done silly things like try and climb Everest and broke the world record for the highest dinner party, learnt to swim at the age of 48, able to swim from England to France. And I've got another challenge coming up for next year. But take that all away from that. Currently what's going on at the moment with the world, it is crazy, to think that we're here now talking as we are, and Zian's in Ukraine at the moment, and what's going on in there. Who would have thought? I mean, who would have thought we'd be actually having that kind of conversation? But what you said, Philip, all companies need to adapt, change, and be ready, because there's always a different change around the corner, and we're seeing that all the time. As an organization, the company I work for, AGS, when the pandemic hit, for instance, we had to change our model. We went from global to local, believe it or not, because we had the infrastructure locally to become local. So, when you're in 97 countries, it helps to a degree. But now what's happening in Ukraine, we're doing what we can to assist in that area in many different ways, and it just shows that we have to adapt and we have to change. But probably more than anything, the guys in Ukraine know this more than us. I mean, they've had to change their whole world, and I think, hat off to every person in Ukraine at the moment, who are dealing with this most atrocious thing that could have happened, and it impacts all of us. It doesn't just impact Ukraine, it impacts every single one of us on this screen and every single one of us around the world, because really we are all one race, and this is what people forget. We are one group on one planet, and it's incredible that we're even talking about war at this stage.
Yeah, isn't it? Okay, listen, we got to go around the horn here quickly. Everyone has to talk. Gary Sanger is an executive search expert. Gary, you sent me a note saying how much work you're doing now, and you're overwhelmed. And I really appreciate what time you can give us here. And one of the things that Gary has told me about was that when you finally find the right person, or what you think is the right person, and then all of a sudden that offer is accepted, that's when the real work begins. What does that mean, particularly relative to what Philip and Andy were just saying?
First of all, it's good to be here, Ed. Thank you so much. I'm in the executive search business. We are retained by clients. We've had half a dozen offers out in the last month. We've landed 4 of them. We lost 2 of them. And even in those 4 we landed, when they said yes, that seemed to be when most of the work happened. Example, we have a middle market roll up in the printed circuit board manufacturing and design business. This particular investor, based in Southern California, had invested 30 to 40 million bucks, rolling up 3 companies. They had $10 million worth of production equipment on the docks, unopened, because nobody knew how to use it. So we were charged with finding the CEO. We narrowed a list of a few dozen down to 3, zeroed in on 1, made an offer, and it was rejected. We then met with the major investor, the execs, and said, look, you've got this major investment. You're a couple $100,000 off, and you're some equity off. What are you going to do? They had a board meeting the next morning, and they literally upped the offer by more than 35% as it relates to base and bonus streams. Likewise, significantly had to up the equity participation and offer a 2-year employment contract. I'm just telling you, the work really begins. Another quick example, family moving from Michigan to Arizona. They said yes. And then in the initial search for homes in Arizona, there were only 2 out of hundreds that met their criteria, and they weren't very good. They had a big issue with childcare. We got on the spot in partnering with a real estate services firm and with a mortgage banking firm to get them qualified and literally handhold them through the process. He started 2 weeks ago.
So you didn't know that you were going to be in the relocation management business?
Well, you think about what you're going to do with your home, and suddenly you're going to be across the country, and you've got a 3-month or 3-year-old and a 10-month-old and a spouse that makes more money than you. Now, how do you put that complicated puzzle together? You find other experts that do great stuff in their fields.
So I want to introduce you to Mark Nadich. You guys are sort of in the same space. Hi, Mark. Thanks for being on the program.
Great to be here, Ed.
So what do you say about what Philip and Gary were talking about here?
Well, I think we're living in an incredibly interesting new reality, right? And some of the work that I'm involved with recently, the company that I do some consulting with was just bought out by Korn Ferry, Patina Solutions. And this is part of their overall strategy around, being a global organizational consulting firm. And one of our core areas is in interim executive placements. So, I think that the world is changing so dramatically. And to Philip's point is, 3 years is an eternity today. And you really have to adapt and adopt to what it is. And Gary, I feel your pain. That we have the same challenges, whether that be for interim or executive search. And it is about as complex as it's ever been in the 35 years I've been involved.
So let me just jump in here because we have to move along. I want to make sure everybody gets to meet each other, and let me facilitate as much as I can without stuttering too much here. So Mark Nadich and I have known each other a number of years. He recently took early retirement, about 4 years ago? Seems like yesterday, when you were speaking in front of my live audience in Chicago. We had a full house at that. Mark Nadich is a former big pharma executive, top level, and that's how we met. And so now he's, and I'm really pleased to announce this, that you are executive in residence at Marquette University. Would you like to share some of that?
Just that it's an amazing opportunity to go back to my alma mater and work with students, with faculty, with the business community, and continue to hopefully grow our capabilities as a terrific university and a terrific business school.
Great. Dave Levine is an expert in taking care of people in a work environment. Dave, tell us about global care experts.
Sure. And I guess I haven't told you that I've climbed Everest 3 times and swam the English Channel backstroke all the way.
Wow.
That's all?
Pretty impressive, Andrew.
Are you nuts?
A little, yeah. Global care experts emphasis is mental health and well-being, primarily outside the U.S. I'm based here, but in my history with ComPsych and Optum, United Health, developed resources around the globe and really have fun with that area, where access to mental health resources is not like it is here in the States. So I help match people with resources in countries around the globe, helping employers typically in crisis, and on the front end, offering health risk assessments in various languages.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're going to come back to you in just a second because there's a lot of mental health issues in the workplace. And what's the workplace today? So it's everywhere, right, Dave?
It's everywhere. With the shift that we've all seen from working remotely to the mobile employees that we heard about from others, Globiana and others dealing with expat population, as Philip gave us a great overview on. It's not the traditional office or manufacturing site that we've come to think of as the workplace.
Dave Edick, everybody. Dave Edick has lived and worked in Russia Dave, why don't you tell us more about that experience, and what do you think of this conversation so far? It's pretty cool, I think.
It's a great conversation, and Phil Berry, with his blue ocean thinking. Now is the time for that, because we're swinging the hinge of history. 3 years. I'm living that in 3 days. I don't know about, and the rest of us are, whether we know it or not. This has just been a phenomenal time, and perhaps in an inverse way is what I experienced in Russia in the 90s, starting in 1992, from a much more positive direction, living in an environment where we're trying to reorganize order out of chaos. Now it's fundamentally different. What was is no more, and we got to figure out what's next. It's a whole lot more than just Ukraine. This is the most challenging time for business of my lifetime. The ending of the Cold War was a piece of cake compared to this.
So our mutual friend, Rob Pianko, who's not with us today, but he's been on before. Yeah. He and I had a discussion, which I think you and he had also. But when he and I spoke, it like blew me away. Not at that moment, but after looking at the tape. I didn't publish it right away because I wanted to digest the things that he was talking about. He's a specialist in foreign affairs and hands-on military and intelligence work in that regard. I won't get into any more than what I just said, but he said that looking back after World War II, the world was in shambles, just like it's heading that way again now, unfortunately. But there were geniuses that came together to construct the American-led order with the United Nations and the Marshall Plans and things like that. And it solved the problems. It put things in order, and the result was years of calm and purpose. And it seems like, and this is not political, it's just business, but it seems like that level of leadership and thinking at the top level, public anyway, is missing, gone missing. And the order that the American, I don't want to call it aristocracy, but the American leadership at the time built as it needs to get rebuilt, re-energized, because we built the system, Americans, with the help of Europeans, of course, and the cooperation from Germany and Japan following World War II. It all worked, and because it was positive. And I don't know whether the man upstairs was looking over everybody's shoulder or not, but the damn thing worked. And so now it looks like it's not working. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I agree with you. We have
well,
now we've got a couple generations now we have self-selected for siloed thinking. That's the deal. That's what I encounter everywhere all the time. And getting beyond that, I mean, you can do siloed collaborative environments, but that requires a great deal of trust and operating essentially with the same map. We don't have that shared map anymore. We're going to get a new political administration in a couple of years, and I have no idea how to explain that to my partners abroad. It will be very different than what we have now. So the challenge is to see the field for what it is rather than what we want it to be. And I come back to how Phil Berry is approaching this. We're going to have to that blue ocean thinking is seeing the field. And we're going to have to come from our best instincts and be ourselves, and being collaborative, exercising leadership is, telling somebody what to do is one thing, organizing people so that we were all mutually pursuing an agreed set of goals is something very different. And we're not there yet right now. We're kind of toying with it now.
Dave, if I could bring focus on one thing you asked me to think about in prep for
Ed,
this.
May I chime in, Ed, real quick?
Yeah.
Do you mind? Yeah,
No.
just on what you were saying, I think one of the interesting things is first of all, thank you to Ukraine and Moldova, Poland, all of Eastern Europe, Estonia, Lithuania, because they're fighting our battle. We're helping them, but they're boots on the ground, especially in Ukraine, slugging it out with the Russians, right? My comment in this quick, this last, few minutes we've been talking with Dave is what about those neutral, quote unquote, neutral third-party countries and companies, the companies that we work for our people, because, it's interesting the comment you made about before there was a world order during the Cold War, right? It's true, but that wasn't quite true if you were in Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia, or Latin America. I could rattle off, Rhodesia, Angola, Mozambique, Cuba, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Vietnam, South Korea. A lot of these countries basically became the proxies to how to fight these wars, kind of thing. And whether Russian or American or British or Canadian troops were involved and so forth, it was pretty turbulent. And I think one of the things we're looking at is, and I'll say this in a little bit of a maybe just like a clinical manner rather than a humanitarian manner, is I think we're all looking to see how much Ukraine can basically eliminate any incentive for Vladimir Putin to continue with this. If he's pulled out from Kiev, at least for the moment, he got his nose bloodied pretty badly. Now he's going to focus on the Donbass, and the question is if he can even gain, one square foot of acreage and claim it as a victory, that might, pull him into go back to Mozambique, go back to Cuba and Venezuela, go back to, places where the Russians have not been in a long time and so forth. So I think with the New World Order, with the blue ocean thinking is for the companies is where do I fit in? Because at the end of the day, irrespective of companies being political or not political, you have to choose a side, because if not, both sides will make you choose one. They will ensure that you choose a side, kind of thing, whether it be through official sanctions or poking and prodding and so forth. I think it's something that we all need to be cognizant of.
We are pleased to welcome Adamo Education as a proud sponsor of Global TV Talk Show.
The concept of a micro school is the reimagining of the one-room schoolhouse. My name is Tremor Becker. I'm the president and CEO of Adamo Education. The micro school concept really does not just lend itself to the personalization and the customization of learning, but also the social development and fostering that sense of love for learning. Unlike what we see in traditional brick and mortar schools, we have multiple grade levels in the same learning space. Students can be enriched by the socialization that they get, as well as the academic support from peers. What differentiates Adamo is the fact that we are taking the best pieces of brick and mortar, of digital, and then at-home learning. Students here can come 5 days a week. They can come 4 hours a day. It will really just depend on what is best for the student and for the parent. To enroll, just reach out via phone, text, or email, and we'll have that personalized conversation, and we'll be able to get you all set. Check us out at adamoeducation.org.
Become a global player in your field.
Cross Culture to Go provides virtual support for your global business and career success.
We can help you thrive in 140 plus countries and markets.
On the web at crossculturetogo.com.
Before we go to Emily and Irma and Diane and Tammy, we need, and Barbara, we need to go to Elena and Globiana because you have to leave in 5 or 6 minutes. So tell us about your new product that's just launched.
Thank you, Ed. First of all, I want to put a little bit of a perspective for everybody. I was born and raised in the Soviet Union in Moscow. So quite a few members of my team are from Eastern Europe, Ukraine, and Russia alike. So this conversation is intensely personal for many reasons. On the 24th of February, I was working with our Stuttgart team in Germany, and I was to board the plane to Moscow on the 25th with a suitcase full of supplies for my elderly, still in Russia. And with about 6 hours to spare, I canceled the trip, and I never cancel anything. So that's what it looks like from our side. I would like to use the next couple of minutes just to talk about this blue ocean perspective is really helpful, and it's wonderful to see how it reiterates with everybody. Our working motto has become be helpful. Everybody knows pretty much everybody knows Mr. Rogers' famous quote, look for helpers. We changed it around in terms of be helpful. The only way to survive for us and continue our vision of borderless world and positive thinking and changing people's experience is doing things tactically on the ground and beyond, where we make ourselves feel useful, and that's the way to channel the energy. So we took a long look at what we have at our disposal already as a business with core competence and significant presence internationally. And we literally have pivoted the platform that we normally provide for our relocation management partners and global businesses worldwide, and recreated it in a limited space at our World for Ukraine site, where we have taken our courses and with an army of volunteers from Ukraine and beyond have translated them into Ukrainian. We were very lucky where, again, helpers showed up. So we have Ukrainian American, Russian American, and a bunch of Western Europeans working with us on this project. But I am asking all of the vendors and anybody who touches global mobility out there to take a long look around you. Of course, we're all very positive and wonderful at writing checks and supporting groups that are already on the ground. And hopefully that will continue. But we, like nobody else, are in position to think on behalf of the refugees as to what's the next coming for them. Once the basics are covered, they're out of war zone, all of these elements are in place. What happens with these people? What is their adaptation like? How do we help them position for better jobs? How do we make them independent? That's how we will rebuild Ukraine later on. So please hit me on LinkedIn. I posted my email. We are in talks with multiple partners like Upwardly Global. Amazon just launched this amazing initiative. You are the helpers, we're the helpers. Let's just do something beautiful together. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. Let's go to Emily. Emily is a native of the Soviet Union area, Moldova. Emily.
Hello, everyone. Probably you would be not surprised if I have some different opinions, even after 30 years living outside of Soviet Union. So when I left, it was still Soviet Union. I left from Ukraine. And telling the truth, over the last couple of months, I started to listen again to Ukrainian news in Russian and in Ukrainian in regards to the war, because what we are reading here, in our Western or whatever other source, and I fully understand, I believe I understand Ukrainian point of view because it actually coincides with my point of view. So earlier it was mentioned the world order after the Second World War. So 75 years passed, and what I see, we don't have leaders, we don't have actually countries. So that's why world is in turmoil. So US, in my view, gave up Ukraine. UN and NATO actually waiting for Ukraine to fight, and look how, to take, amazement from the side. So Ukrainians don't have any other choice as a being hero, and kudos to them. So I really support what they're doing, and we are immigrants from like Russian-speaking immigrants in Toronto and Canada, really supporting with money, with whatever we can. My question still like the same as Globiana mentioned, what would be with 4 million of refugees who already living or coming to different European countries, and not only European countries, because majority of these people are women with children or elderly people, all men, from 18 to 60 cannot leave Ukraine. They're fighting on the ground, and majority of the women don't have language skills, depending on country they arrive, they have a lot of welcoming people. It's great. On the personal level, people of Eastern Ukraine, and not only Eastern Ukraine, are really grateful. I'm grateful to them for what they're doing and trying to do my side. Government, I kind of more skeptical. A lot of words, yes, nice words about support, but we've seen nobody actually, Zelensky was trying to speak out to every parliament, and I think only actually UK helped, and a little bit United States as a form, with the guns, with what they were asking for. So 4 million or more people in Ukraine without language skills, without probably professional, you need time to adapt, and without financial support from the government of different countries, including Canada. I'm not sure about US now, because it was announced 100,000 people to come to US, but how they gonna adapt? What they gonna do? Okay, they have a right to work, but how you can work? Probably because of some of organization, and you as the best representatives would hire them. But again, language skills. So a lot of skills, and people have a right to live the year. What will be after 1 year? Somebody would adapt, young one, probably more skillful, but it will be a big problem because cost of living is very high in our countries, and for people to adapt after all this stress, it's really not easy. What I offer, at least if we can, CEO of organizations to help to hire professional Ukrainians who are now or later would be able to work, as remote workers for some companies in the West, in the US, and some companies already offering this ability, because it will help actually to rebuild the country, which will take years to come, and to keep family even on a distance, to help people who already left Ukraine, and to help rebuild Ukraine, by participating in professional war. And young people are very educated, and they have skills. They were already outsourcing for Americans to work in IT and marketing in many different fields.
Thank you, Emily. Please stand by. We want to get, listen, on this program and in our own connections, the relocation industry is poised to help. They just need to understand what there is to do. A lot of this is marketing and PR and also connections. We have with us Tammy Gillespie, who's a housing provider. So Tammy, welcome to the show. This is your first time, and we've known each other many years, but this is the first talk show we've done together. And so are you ready to accept Ukrainians to be customers in housing, corporate housing? Yeah.
We are. So you know, we are in the business of housing people, but we are in the business of people and accommodating people and having an empathetic nature. And I love how Philip articulated the need for leaders to step up and you know, accept change and pivot on a strategic level. And now more than ever, I think you know, Philip's talking points are valid, and as leaders, we have to adjust to change. We have to be more empathetic, and you know, whatever we can do as, you know, we have to come together as a global force more than ever. And so to answer your question, Ed, I'm not sure. Was your question, are we willing to take on Ukrainian refugees? Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Barbara Bolt is a language specialist. Hello, Barbara. Thanks for being there.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for having me. This has been such a fascinating conversation. I'm really enjoying it. It's interesting, you know, we've been talking about the fact that this war is impacting everything, and it's so true. I have a couple of clients who've been directly impacted by what's going on with the Ukrainian situation. One of them is a gas and oil trader, and his world has been flipped. He's a young man. He's never experienced anything like this in his lifetime. And he's been coaching with me to improve his communication skills and has found himself unable to concentrate. He simply can't get to our sessions. So he just wrote to me today to say that he wants to suspend for a bit, which I totally agree with. However, it's really important to have good communication skills in these kinds of situations. The more crazy things are in the world or in the company or whatever, the more important it is to be able to get your points across clearly and effectively and persuasively.
So I want to make sure that you and Emily, you know, connect in the chat.
Yeah,
All right,
we have connected.
because this is really in sync. And I want to get back to you in a minute. Pierre Geronimo and I have known each other over 20 years or so. And in his earlier life, he was my host partner in Geneva and other Paris and some other places.
Bonjour, Pierre.
Yeah.
Hello, Philip. Nice to see you.
You too.
Yeah. So Pierre's new venture is Cooptalis. Am I saying that right?
Perfectly. You're pronouncing perfectly right.
And this is all about finding talent, spotting talent, developing talent, and then relocating talent.
Correct.
That's right. So I want to make sure you meet Gary and also Mark Nadich. It's all about talent here.
Yeah, well, basically we spot, meaning we source the talents wherever they are. And in any form of employment, it can be like, we can work as an employment record. We can work as an employer. People can work remotely. They can be freelancers. So we offer basically all the legal vehicles for employment. Once we have sourced these talents, we relocate them. So we take care of immigration, we take care of the relocation package, the full relocation package. And once they're working for clients, we provide some online training programs for language, for cross-cultural, for the partner and everything. So it's basically what we do. And we are very talent-centric, meaning we are a digital company. We are a French group originally, and we're part of the French tech, meaning we use growth marketing to attract the talents.
Interesting, isn't it? So Ed Rivas, let's go back to the security angle. You've heard from all these different people now, particularly interesting dialogue from Elena from Globiana and Emily Braun. And by the way, Emily is an expert in international lifestyle. In other words, go move away, go live somewhere else. And so I want everybody to make sure everybody knows each other here. And you're in Mazatlan, which is not exactly too bad, right? That's okay.
Not the worst place in the world.
And look, and the internet works. How about that? So Ed, what about security and all this stuff? And what kind of security should we be tuned into with respect to all these immigrants coming in very quickly into the US.
Okay, so I'll make one quick comment and then address what you're saying and some other quick items real quick. First of all, I think Emily and Elena are correct. I think it's going to take a U.S. A post-World War II style Marshall Plan to rebuild Ukraine. This might be a controversial comment, but I think the U.S. administration correctly exited Afghanistan to allow to have the funding to do things like, and not to say that we were hoping for this, but basically to be contingencies like Ukraine and other parts of the world where we have to go in there and not just support them, but help rebuild and so forth. So kudos again to Ukraine. And I'm going to switch a little bit. I think one of the things that I would, any thoughts or any, there's always been industrial espionage, and expats, especially married men, have always been the prime targets of industrial espionage. If this situation with Ukraine continues for the longer term, then Russia's going to be cut out of a lot of technology, and not just like, microchips or higher level defense weapons, even simple industrial machinery or banking and finance and other know-how. So that's going to increase their impetus. And they were pretty good during the Cold War. So I think that's something that needs to be, considered for global mobility, is how do you you can train them, but how do you monitor them also? If this really does become the new Cold War, then Russia's going to have a lot of incentive to ramp up their industrial espionage. I leave it out to the group if anybody has any commentaries on that.
Well, I would say the Russians have been are really effectively being cut out of the global economy right now, and I'm very serious about this. So you raise a good point about espionage, and there's going to be plenty of that. We're heading very rapidly into a choice between two worlds. One is bipolar, that'll essentially be U.S. centric and China centric, or something more multipolar, which is where I think it will ultimately end up, and it'll be a big challenge. But the implications of cutting out the Russian economy from the global economy and adjusting to that, everybody's going to have to adjust everywhere. There will be no easy road out of this, and there will be a very high price to pay.
Very true. Very true.
Philip, you want to talk about integrating personal brand into a new, improved lifestyle?
I think one of the things that's been great about this wonderful conversation is that you have individuals who are developing their capabilities in a way that's very different than maybe it was 10 years ago. I mean, I certainly view myself as more of a global person. And, from the standpoint of the language skills that I have acquired, from the standpoint of how I live and what I do. And I think that survival really depends upon, matter of fact, if we go to the world that David is talking about, which I think is probably the case, where we could be divided up into maybe four quadrants in terms of the world, we have to figure out ways to cross those boundaries. So that way we're able to communicate and really have a safe planet that we can operate within. And so the personal branding has to do with figuring out what your new proposition will be in terms of how you're going to work, where you're going to work, how you want to be identified, and more specifically, especially for everyone on here, what is your distinctive competence? As you are outlining where your business is going to go, what is it that you deliver distinctively to others and to significant others, and how are you able to brand and market that so that people understand the value that you bring? And it's everybody, like, for example, I hear individuals who say, well, maybe I'm in relocation. Well, no, redefine that altogether. Say what you're into is being able to help the individuals and families transition more effectively. It's not just moving furniture. It's the whole ball of wax from a standpoint of cross-cultural impact and effectiveness. And every organization that I have worked with over the years, that's the message that I bring. So I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but I think that for each of us being able to identify our distinctive competence in a way that is going to be more impactful in the future and on an ongoing base and sustaining basis, not just like tomorrow, but in a way that continues to reinvent, reposition, and innovate your personal stance in terms of leadership and from a standpoint of how you are dealing with significant others.
And coming up is going to be Philip reiterating about IQ, CQ, and EQ. And so I want to go to Marianne Rechek and Angie Weinberger and Mark Colo. But first, I want to go back to Andy Elliman in the UK. Andy, please comment on what you've heard here so far about the relevance to your position as a global leader.
Yeah, I think the conversations that we're hearing, they're similar. I mean, everything is, we are all linked. We all have a part to play in this, but we all have to adapt at the same time. And I think, you take the relocation industry and you say, well, where do you sit in that relocation industry? Because we work with all companies worldwide in all countries, we sit in a funny place in a way. We are helping from both sides, to try and make sure that the corporates that are in those areas are adjusting to what they need to within those countries. But at the same time, for us, it's all about helping the people. It's helping the people and making a difference, because we forget the jobs that we do. It's about actually helping on a humanitarian side to do what we can, to put that into perspective as well. We can all and we all do have our own views on what's happening, but it's how we adapt to the now, because what we're talking about today, I guarantee next week will be different. This will change in the next few weeks. The whole thing will evolve again, and we need to rethink again. A bit like your blue sky thinking. It's how do we manage not just tomorrow, but next week and the month later, and how does that fit into everything that we're doing at the moment?
Thank you, Andy. So once again, the company is called AGS. So much to do. Dave Edick, you mentioned to me yesterday that the current crackdown in Hong Kong, that the communists are using to control things, is the COVID outbreak. Is it really COVID, or is it just an excuse?
So COVID's a big deal right now in that part of the world. So Hong Kong and China basically were able to avoid the chaos that the rest of the world has gone through the last few years, and now it has arrived big time. I don't want to draw any political connections here between the two, beyond certain cultural tendencies on how to deal with a challenging situation. But so for Hong Kong, the effort to have zero COVID has resulted in a situation where companies can't move people in and out, international companies. And while Hong Kong is now part of China, and economically and culturally heading more and more that way, Hong Kong's still a big player in the global economy, and a lot of companies have offices there. And there's now really, beyond the politics, there's a real move, especially by European companies, to leave Hong Kong, move maybe to Singapore, which is its own rather different cultural mix. But companies are going to leave Hong Kong in a big way over the next year based on this zero COVID. But what's happening in China now with the zero COVID is going to deliver another phase of economic shock globally. We're not reading about it because everything is Ukraine 24 hours a day, but just stay tuned.
Yeah. Dave Levine, you're an expert in Asia Pacific now. tell us about what you're doing in that realm.
I'm on the board of a group, a nonprofit, a peer, the Asia Pacific Employee Assistance Roundtable, and we have done monthly updates. There's another one coming up on the 24th in the US, appear.org, if anybody's interested in registering for that free update. And the focus is on South Korea this month, but we focused on different countries around APAC over the last year. And you can't generalize about Asia Pacific. It's so different, as Dave just sort of highlighted. Hong Kong and China are now taking off, but with COVID infections. But the cultures, the infection rates, the vaccination rates. Singapore is another outlier with 85% of their folks being vaccinated, and they're still feeling that's not good enough. They're still pushing for the 100% vaccination. So it's fascinating. Again, my emphasis is mental health, and there just aren't the resources generally throughout APAC as there are in the US and English-speaking countries generally, with some exceptions. So we're trying to use this opportunity of crisis that's going on and the awareness and needs of mental health issues that have increased during COVID to connect the dots and connect employees with, access them with professional resources to get some more help for stress, depression, anxiety, and the like.
Thank you very much. Marianne, are you able to join us?
Hang on one sec.
Okay, audio is perfect if that's.
Oh, you got the, okay. I'm on my phone. It's a little frustrating to be on my phone because everything's so tiny.
Yeah, well, we hear you fine.
Oh, okay, great. So, Ed, I think your Global TV's talk show needs to start its own company to enlighten the world as to how it should be. The people on this call are brilliant minds, and the world needs to know who these people are. And I'm sure, some of them do.
Okay, I'm going to organize an SPAC, one of those special acquisition company. Who wants to put money in?
Right. It's all about the bottom line. I love this blue ocean concept. That is going to be my new mantra going forward. This just because one, it conjures up a wonderful visual picture in my mind. And if anyone hasn't seen The Big Blue, it's a fascinating movie that I highly recommend everybody see, about deep waters and swimming and philosophy and the world and all that kind of stuff. Ed, you leave me stumped every time. I don't even know what to say anymore. But I'm just really glad to be here.
Thank you. Angie.
Is that on Netflix, Marianne? Is that on Netflix or that movie?
Big Blue?
Oh, that's a really good question. I saw it so many years ago, but it made such an impression on me.
Ah, okay, great.
Great. I'll figure out where it is and I'll let you guys know.
I'll look it up. I'll Google it. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Angie Weinberger in Zurich. This has been quite a change from the last meeting we had.
But not from the one before, where we actually talked about the war in Ukraine and crisis communication. And what companies, especially global mobility managers and HR managers, need to learn so that they get better at crisis management. Because frankly speaking, I mean, we've been through so many crises already in global mobility, but I'm not sure we're all very good at managing real emergencies like the one that we are currently in the middle of. And I have to say, it moves me deeply to hear the stories, the personal stories, from people affected directly or where the families are directly affected. So one of the things I'm encouraging companies now to do is in Europe is to think about, what can we do to help people that are affected either directly or where family members are affected by what is going on in Ukraine. It could be, for example, you give some additional compassionate leave. Yeah, that could be a good idea to do. Or, when somebody takes in a refugee family, maybe that they can just take a bit more time to help them to go through the administrative process, the registrations, and all that the things that they have to do to actually get settled. I mean, that's the first step, but I think also it's, you know, when you consider somebody who's traumatized, I really think it's very important that they get sort of the feeling that they're somewhere safe. And being somewhere safe obviously includes also the knowledge that you can actually stay and work in the country. And I have to say the EU and Switzerland, they have made such a great effort to allow the refugees from Ukraine to work right away. I mean, we haven't seen that with refugees from any other country in the past. So, I mean, I think this is a really great progress in immigration, that we can actually see the possibility, you know, if you feel healthy enough, if you're a woman and you came here with your child and you find a job, even if it's an online job, if it's a remote job, you can start working right away. Imagine that, and it's legal. So I think we also have to take into account that, you know, there's a big infrastructure now that has been set in place in a very short time, and it seems to work particularly well this time. So I have to say I'm very proud of the EU and Switzerland for how they're managing the support here.
Yeah, okay. So I want to make sure that Angie, you know Andy Ellerman and Zishan. What do you think, Zishan? Does this give you some hope?
It does definitely, and whatever NG said, I think part of it is being followed. I know people from Canada, people in Austria, even here in Europe, they have been helping the Ukrainian families a lot. Even imagine to the extent that these surrogate mothers have been asked to come over. To the extent to come over and join their family for the time being. So yes, it's all been incredible, but there is a lot of things that still need to be done. There is still a huge horde of migrants that are still leaving from Ukraine. We wish they would return back, and we really wish all of us will rebuild Ukraine in the next few years. But then again, yes, whatever has been said here, if this is followed properly, it is going to go a very far ahead, all of this. Yes, I'll agree to that.
I welcome you to join us again anytime. I want to make sure everybody knows Mark Colo. Mark and I are friends. He happens to be a Parkinson's patient at the time, but prior to that, he was an executive with a transportation company. He has formed with others a charity, IRS approved, called FindNeuroHelp.org, and I'm very happy to help do that PR. Mark Colo, welcome. Do you want to say something? Can't hear you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. I often do that. I just start talking and then I forget I'm talking. So I don't know. It's good to be with many of you again. I've enjoyed the times we've spoken before. Yeah, I'd say it's been now about, well, when I was 48 years old, I noticed an unusual physiological change happened in my right. It was my right pinky finger that began to twitch. And the next 18 years has been quite a journey for me. I didn't expect I'd be where I am now, or what I've accomplished now, but I can relate to what everyone said today. And I can also relate to war and causes of war, because when I was 19 years old, I went to serve a service mission for 2 years in a country called Northern Ireland. And so I know a little bit about civil unrest. I was there during a time that was called the hunger strikes. So civil unrest was at an all-time high, and it affected so many families. And I didn't understand much about the causes of the war, but it always seems like wars come down to power and greed and people that want more. Oftentimes that's a cause of some wars, and sometimes it comes down to a simple word called pride. I think people can get very prideful and think that they're right and the other person's wrong. But communication is key, and I always think about communication. I've been with companies that have gone out of business and gone bankrupt in a very short amount of time because they weren't communicating. There was no downward communication, so the upward communication stopped. And all the communication was at the water cooler, somewhere on a different floor. Not very good morale, not very good production, and you could see why that company failed. I've got 3 credos in life. I'll just share those real quick. I actually have 5 credos, but I'll leave the 2 off for today. The first one is the only constant is change. So embrace it, learn to embrace it. Whether you like it or not, change will happen in your life, whether it's physical, mental, health, or whatever. Change will come, and you can't do a thing about it except accept it. Second is if you think things can't get worse, you're wrong. Life can be a slippery slope, and some bad event could happen, and then it leads to another bad event and another bad event, and you just can't really do anything about it. The third is control is an illusion. And when you have Parkinson's, most Parkinson's patients have a thing called a resting tremor. You see what my hand does here? That's my left hand. That's my right hand. Now you'll notice it's an asymmetrical condition. It affects half the body more than the other half. So I have it on the right side, which was my writing hand. And if you can imagine what my writing looks like these days on my right hand, not very well. So you have to learn to adjust to use your left hand, right? That's just a small thing about Parkinson's. That's about the tip of the iceberg of Parkinson's. So much more that's below the surface level of the water. It can be very challenging in many ways. It affects almost every function of your human body. So over time, it becomes very, very challenging. So I just think we have to look at things a little differently. We need to look at things with a new perspective. I had a very fearful perspective when the movie Jaws came out. That was, I think, in the blue ocean, Philip. When Jaws came out, I was an avid surfer until Jaws came out. And then when I got out there to surf, I was always looking below my board, trying to see when that shark was going to come up and take a bite out of me. It was scary times. And but that was just one event, one movie, but it still impacted the way I thought. So,
hey, Mark, you and I have been.
You need a bigger boat. That's what I learned from that.
Mark, you and I have been able to produce a few medical TV talk shows. And I have to tell you, next to the global TV talk shows, on the Google count, medical TV is the faster growing thing now. And it's because of the doctors you've been recruiting to be on our talk show to talk about such things as the vaccine, to do or not to do, blah, blah, blah. But one of the doctors that we interviewed last month, I guess, was
Jean Loring.
Yeah, and it was about stem cells. And her research, this is a world-renowned research scientist in the use of stem cells. And one of the things that she's working on is, according to you and her, and I'm just the facilitator, talk show host, but she was talking about what they're looking at is how to apply stem cells to fix or to reverse or to alleviate some pressure in the brain, to attack the cells that are being damaged by whatever is going on up there with respect to Parkinson's and ALS. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct. She's probably the closest scientist to finding an actual cure for that process. But you got to go through all the FDA approvals and all the hoops to get there, but so she's close. She's very close. This next speaker that we're going to have here, I think it's going to be end of the month here.
Right, end of April.
It was the wife of a gentleman named Pablo Sasson Corsi, and Pablo is an expert in epigenetics. He's like a pioneer of epigenetics, which, if you know what, I know Mark Nadis knows what that is, and a few of the others. Dave, you probably heard of it before. I had never heard of it. And she was married to me, one of the profound, renowned scientists of that study, epigenetics. But you're all welcome to join our broadcast. Can I invite everyone that wants to attend?
Yeah, it's free of charge, never a registration fee.
Welcome to attend an actual taping of that show. She is a marvelous woman. She's an expert in Parkinson's, and she teaches about Parkinson's at UC Irvine, where her husband used to work for. He passed away about 2 years ago. And the fact they worked, their offices where they worked was on the same floor, top building of the neurology building, which is called Sprague Hall. And they were 2 doors down from each other. So when I first met him, I said, "You got to meet my wife." He says, "What a wife?" "She's great, an expert in Parkinson's." I said, "Oh, that's great. I'd like to meet her." And so he said, "Well, follow me." And he took me out this door and walked down one door. We went to her office, and she was just a wonderful person to meet. So, so she's now
Mark,
a widow.
Mark, it's Dr. Jean Loring, right?
Right.
Jeanne.
Correct.
Loring. Tammy, I will send you the link to the TV show. And you know, all of these doctors, they're so smart that they can talk in plain English to me. And so, again, I'm just a facilitator getting it out to the audience. So thank you, Mark, for doing that. All right, we have less than 10 minutes. Actually, we can go on for an hour, but I think everyone's probably got other things to do today. So let's go back to Mark Nadich. Tell us about how the Korn Ferry acquisition is impacting you.
Ed, before I do that, though, I just want to say a couple things. One is, it is amazing to hear from the collective wisdom of this team, right? This group of people. I think there's so many intersection points that we could actually work on together, rather than just individually, around how we can do something to help Ukraine. I think there's a lot of people that are already doing that, but I still think that maybe there's an opportunity for us to say, you know, what would be 3 or 4 or 5 things that we could work on that could make a difference. So I just put that out as a potential, maybe future discussion point, operational discussion. And I just think there's so much wisdom, and the diversity of the people on this call is just amazing. So
yeah, before we do that, Barbara, you had a question about the ALS situation. You wanted to know, Barbara Bolt, about the name of the doctor?
It was Tammy actually who asked for the name of the doctor. So
okay,
if somebody puts it in the chat, we'll be good. Yeah. We lost a friend to it, but yeah.
Yeah. So just very quickly, I think, you know, everyone knows Korn Ferry. Most people do. It's a global consulting, organizational consulting firm. I think the benefit for both our organization, Patina, and them is that we have almost 30,000 people that are a part of what we call our Patina Nation. And these are individuals that have 20 plus or more years of experience, many of them in very senior levels, but it also can go down to manager, director, expertise levels that we then help organizations succeed with their business, right? And so the benefit is that we're now part of, and we're kind of as they do their work, is they buy organizations and they kind of let them run within their scope, and then they look at synergies and opportunities down the road. So I think it's going to be a win-win situation, because often we get asked in our world, can you do this, this, and this? We may not have that capability. We're very focused in 3 or 4 areas. So this is just going to help, I think, all of us help organizations hopefully succeed.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thank you. Oh, God, this has been great for me. Thank you. Philip Berry, tell us about IQ, CQ, EQ. EQ is emotional.
Yeah, I think it's about people get hired based upon their intelligence. You know, so that's knowledge and what you know. But as I've been coaching people, I find that the problems that they have is not based upon whether or not he or she is smart, it's based upon their relationship skills. You know, and that's where EQ comes in, because the relationship skills of a lot of leaders is, as they move up in the ladder, is very poor. it's not as developed as it could be. And when they're working acquisitions, matter of fact, if you look at a number of acquisitions that have taken place or mergers, they fall apart not because the product or the technology wasn't right, is because the people can't get along well with each other. And that's where you get into the EQ piece. And I think working globally, which is something that we have to have, is so important to understand that people operate out of different perspectives. They have a different context in terms of how they view the world. And your ability, I have found that my ability to step out of my US framework and to go into the framework of others is what has made me successful. That I'm not looking at things as an American. I'm trying to look at it from a global perspective, which means that I'm going in from a perspective of trying to learn about people, of being more humble about what I do, and saying not that I know everything, which is what an IQ person is going to do, but that I'm willing to learn a lot because I don't have that information and I don't know that. And then the CQ is an expanded version of that because it has to do with the cultural quotient and really understanding how people operate in different parts of the world, how they think, what's important, how they live, the questions that they ask, what's important to them. And I have brought up my kids in that type of perspective. I mean, so, I don't have a lot of time, but that's, I think that what Mark was saying, it would be really nice to pull together. I mean, boy, we have such a great group of people here. And what I have seen is people operating on what I call the EQ and CQ level. I mean, it's palpable when you can go into a room or deal with a group and see that people aren't just trying to be smarter than others. Everybody on this podcast is smart and intelligent. You can tell that right away. What's wonderful about it is that they also have the emotional intelligence, and it's operating, it's live, and they have the CQ, which is live. That is what is making this seminar a great seminar.
How cool is that? Wow. Well, Pierre.
You called it a great seminar, Ed. That's to you. Well done.
So, Pierre, thank you for joining us again. I really appreciate that. And have you noticed an uptick in business in your relocation side?
Yeah, we've seen that. I mean, it's pretty busy. I mean, there are a lot of things going on. We don't feel any impact from the war of Ukraine, except for queries and Ukrainian families being relocated to Switzerland. As you know, Switzerland has abandoned the stone-graved neutrality in that area, which creates some debates here in Switzerland. But I think it's an important point from our side. So we've seen, there are a lot of companies who had, expat in Russia or expat in Ukraine, and also, we at the Eura board, we have received, for example, some requests to exclude the Russian relocation companies from the Eura membership, which we refuse to do because these companies are assisting international companies in handling the departure from these expats. And we also try to make it clear that we make a clear-cut difference between Putin, the oligarch, and the Russian citizens. Yesterday, I was having with a business school a lot of interviews, and I was very quite unique. There was a few young Russian students, and they were so uncomfortable. So telling us, do you think that the fact that we are Russians means that we will never find a job? Do you think we are so ashamed of what is going on? And they say, well, during an interview, whether internship or a job, we make a clear-cut difference between the nationality and the personality. So it's not because you have a Russian passport that you have to be held responsible for what the government does. And, so that was pretty, for me, it was like not easy to have these interviews with these young men and women, and, trying to make them comfortable and not think that we will, they say even in Switzerland, they don't dare to speak Russian because people are looking at them in a bad way. That was to be expected, but we need to have the distance and our expertise in global mobility and having relocate people from various culture. We need, and it's a really good example where we need to, in a way, implement our cross-cultural skills. That's where we can bring added value in not making assumptions and not making any kind of amalgam where we put everybody in the same basket. So for me, I learned something when I when I had these interviews. So the good news is that at any point of time, we are learning things. And, I started my career, in Central and Eastern Europe. That was just after the fall of the wall. And I was telling I have 4 children, and they age from 15 to 24. And I told them that when I moved to Budapest, I was traveling for business purposes to Warsaw, to Kiev, to Moscow. And that was the time where everybody was very optimistic. We were all part of Europe. The future was bright open. We were like, there were big hugs and they were so positive. And when I see what is going on now, it's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking, because you think that what has happened, between the beginning of the 90s and 30 years later, there are wars, there are images that are like images from World War II, and that's heartbreaking. What did we screw up? What happened? How did we get there? And that's as a 52 years old man, that's my question today. How did we fuck it up. I'm sorry to be rude, but there is, something really, really, I don't know what we did. But it's insane to see what we're seeing today on various TVs and internet.
Thank you.
Sorry, I spoke with my heart, and maybe it's
thank you, Pierre.
Something not very politically correct what I said, but
it's all right.
It's how I am.
Glad you're on this call, Pierre.
Thank you.
That's really good stuff.
Go, Philip, and then I want to get Barbara involved.
No, I was just going to say, I've known Pierre for 20 years or more. When I lived in Paris, you remember that.
Yeah.
And you've been very consistent in your views, and I agree with them 300%. Thank you very much for sharing it.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you, Philip.
Yeah, anything goes on my show too. Barbara Bolt, you're a language, you're excellent at that regard, people who need to speak English better. So in America, this is not political, once again, it's all business. There's about to be a surge of immigration, not only from the Afghans that are currently housed in military areas away from the public, and now the Ukrainians. So may I ask, have you reached out to the appropriate people to offer your skills?
Not at this point, because it honestly hasn't occurred to me to do that, because I'm less about language and more about culture. But in fact, both are important. Both impact people's ability to function in a new culture. So I should find out who I can reach out to. I've been interacting with some Canadians, and they are so much better at dealing with people who come in an organized way. They know how to find these people easily to help them. And I find in the US, it's a little harder to figure out who to access and how to get involved. But I appreciate the challenge.
Yeah. Dave Edick, do you have any insight on what Barbara was just asking about? Through Sister Cities or some other group?
Well, there's San Diego's got a long history of being involved in refugee resettlement. The politics have become more difficult and resources are really stretched. Those Afghans are here. Go to the long-term stay hotels and motels, and they're there. Yeah, it's something that there are so many good people out there, and anybody that's made it this far has really set themselves apart. I just, one of the challenges is in a for-profit world is, doing these things nonprofit. Yeah, I got to stop there.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, Mark Nadich, you're a people person par excellence for many years from the pharmaceutical industry mainly. What do you think of all this, all the people needs that are abundantly clear right now?
Well, I think we've covered so many different areas, but I think it goes back to Philip and what other people have said is we have to care, we have to build relationships, we have to connect, and we have to try to make a difference in the end. And I think that no matter where you live in the world right now, it's there's challenge for everyone, and the more we can work together, I just think better things can happen. Take away all the political things for a moment and just say, how do we work together better?
Humanity and authenticity go a
Yes.
long way.
Bet.
And nobody's got a monopoly on any of those definitions.
Yep.
They're very personal.
For sure.
Andy, so Andy Ellerman, from a London point of view, what do you think? You guys have had the world immigrate to your area.
Yeah, no, I listen. I think I think it's not even about immigration at the moment. I think it's more about the humanitarian part. We've all got our part to play. We've got to look after these people. They are humans. They're like me or you. It could be our families. So I hate the word immigration because to me we're all the same, no matter what color, race, whatever we are, whatever language we speak. We all bleed. And as far as I'm concerned, we're all one. It's a shame the whole world doesn't look like that. It doesn't, and I get very upset the way sometimes people see other people. There's lots of wars going on at the moment, and we focus on one, which is I get it, but I do wonder why we don't look at the other ones that are out there, and why don't we address those? Why don't we see them different? Why are they different? Is it because they're different nationalities? I don't know, but I have no thing there from that side. But Philip, what you said about making sure that you have the right person, the right people, and I think on this platform we definitely have the right set of people. I in my spare time I do lots of expeditions, and if you do an expedition and you take on something like a big mountain or some of the other things I've got happening in Mongolia at the moment, you want the team that are specialized, that are trained, and they know what they're doing. But more importantly, you want the team that you can trust, the team that's got your back, the team that you can sit in a tent for 10 weeks with, because that's what makes it work. So they don't necessarily have to have all the skills. They just need to have the know-how, and you need to be able to get on with those people. So I suppose from my side, for what we've been speaking about today, I just hope that we can resolve it. I just hope the war finishes soon, not just in Ukraine, but as a whole, everywhere, because there's lots of things happening in Africa. There's lots of things in other parts of the world that just gets brushed away. And I just wish we as human race would just come together as one, from that side.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should all sing that song that Coca-Cola had.
We are the world.
Yeah, right. We are the world. Yeah. So this is a commercial break. Emily Braun and I met a couple of months ago, and she has made herself an expert in helping people find a place to live and work remotely. Actually, not remotely, reality, but from a different area, right?
Yes, and actually it's why I'm here now in Mazatlan. It's just beginning of my Mexican Discovery Lifestyle Tour, because I'm moving to different areas where expat communities, mostly from US and Canada, already established or to be established, taking different projects for assisted living, which is very hot topic, or would be hot topic for North Americans, and for active retirement communities in Mexico, because there's many different things going on. So I would be in Lake Chapala. I will be moving through several states of central Mexico. And I'm myself completing my temporary residence. Okay, somebody don't like immigration word, but process in curator. So my plan to live part-time in Canada and Mexico, to have my kind of official legal status in Mexico, to help others to do. And by the way, I'm not working only with Mexico, but I selected Mexico as place for me because I'm working for Central America and Europe. Okay, it's a different story.
Gosh.
So, yes. So because I see, and I'm thinking even about Ukrainians or other people who are coming for Canada and US, and God bless it, you know, the circumstances will work the way and people will find work and, you know, a place of living. But I know how expensive life is in our country's perspective, I mean, US and Canada. And if you don't have family or kind of support from government, I don't rely, sorry, on government, but like how you gonna survive. So I'm looking for the places, because I think, and for Ukrainians and even for Russians who looking to escape the Russia, who don't agree with what's going on, and now they have very limited places, countries who accept them in Europe. And by the way, Mexico, it's still kind of good with Ukraine and Russia, different point, but at least people can legally come here, people can build life here. There's a lot of, you know, agriculture and different kind of projects. Cost of living, I believe, still will be lower here comparing with other places, and Mexican is actually welcoming people. But you need to know places, you need to know, you know, what is good for different people. It's what I'm about at this point, I mean, at this trip.
Yeah, thank you, Emily, for being a sponsor, of course, but also for your insights, extremely timely, and what a coincidence. You know, I started out putting this program together as a continuum from the several others that we've been working on about being a global voice for change, or International Women's Month, and bringing just groups together and letting it flow. So many of you have sent me remarks, ideas, and I remembered most of them, I think. And I thank you for participating here. I would like to try to do this again, although I don't think we could ever replicate this quality on such a spontaneous basis again. So you'll all get a copy of this program when it's edited. Yes? Thank you. Thank you all. Pierre, I really appreciate you coming on at the last second. Very valuable.
Thanks for having me.
Insights. Dave Edick, thank you very much. So here in Southern California, where Dave and I are, it's like 90 degrees, and you know, we're not really ready for it. I'm still wearing a black shirt here. So Philip, you're in Fort Lauderdale. It's summertime there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, really nice weather compared to my old home of New York City.
Yeah, of course. Tammy, you're in Dallas area. Things okay there?
Yes, we're having, our weather is like San Diego weather. We're like at 72 degrees today. It's fantastic. It's unheard of in Dallas, you know.
I remember those days when it was 72. I know it sounds tough, doesn't it? Okay, Mark Nadich. So what do you have coming up the rest of next week and beyond? Are you going to be focusing in on Marquette, or are you going to try to do some things for Korn Ferry?
Well, I have a portfolio career, so a little bit of all those things and then some. That's it. But the weather here is cold and rainy, so I wish I was a little bit warmer.
Yeah, got it. Okay, well, thank you all. I don't want to say goodbye, but I think we'd better. So thank you.
Or else you'll be talking to yourself.
Thank you.
Hey,
Well,
take care, everyone.
I've done that.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye. Enjoy your weekend.
Great people here.
And take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day and stay safe.